Okay, so it should be live. Give me one sec. Awesome. Okay. So we're live. Thank you so much, Kate, for joining me today. It is such a pleasure to have you here. So thank you so much for joining.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and Kate, so where are you calling in from today?
Yeah, so I'm in Italy. I'm originally from the UK, but I live in Italy now. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And you've lived abroad and you've lived in different places, is that right?
I have. I've lived abroad for the last 16 years. I went to Vietnam for 4 years and then Switzerland for 9 years, and then I've been here in Italy since 2 years.
Oh, wow, that's fascinating. Where is your favorite place so far that you've lived?
I mean, I miss the UK a lot actually, although I think I forget how bad the weather is. So, I mean, at the moment, I'd say Italy is my favorite. Yeah, where I am. So that's pretty good.
Awesome. Yeah, Italy is definitely on my list of places to visit. Although I don't
Yeah.
know exactly when that's going to happen, given
Yeah.
current situations. But yeah, Italy it looks beautiful, especially I've heard a lot of good things about the Tuscany area.
Yeah, that's where I am actually, in Tuscany.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, if I ever get over there, then I can give you a visit.
Yeah,
That'd be
absolutely.
amazing.
Yeah.
So Kate and I we met, oh goodness, I'm trying to think of when this was. It was a few years ago. I mean, this was probably 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, it feels like quite a while ago now. Yeah.
Yeah, so we met through a Facebook group that Kate had started around it. Basically, is a support group for women who have undergone the leap or the leats, or there's different ways that it's spelt out, right? The loop, there's different. Basically, it's a medical procedure where if you're having dysplasia, which is changes to the cells in the cervix. Like if you go in for your pap smear and they see abnormal changes, and usually they'll do a biopsy, and then it will come back certain levels of dysplasia, and then sometimes they will recommend this procedure where they basically take an electrical wire medical device and they cut away part of your cervix. And so from this particular procedure, what they don't often inform you about are the potential side effects. And I don't know what the actual numbers or statistics are as far as the women who actually have side effects. We don't really know, because I think a lot of women don't report it and they don't talk about it. They kind of just live with it. But we do know from our Facebook group that there are, several thousand at least in the Facebook group, right?
Yeah, I think based on some smaller studies, I mean, I think there must be millions in the world, at least. Yeah. So yeah, it's a big, big problem.
Yeah, and this is a very common procedure that's done. And I remember when I went in, it was, the way it was discussed was very nonchalant. Oh, this is a very common thing we do all the time. You'll be fine, and I was listening to this really interesting podcast where there was a medical doctor who was on, and she was talking about like birth control and hormones and all of this. And what she said really stood out to me. She said that medical doctors are not trained in how to give complete, full, informed consent.
Wow.
And I totally agree with this. And I think that the oath that doctors take to do no harm, if you're not adequately consenting people, I think that is a violation of human rights and an ethical concern at that point. But that, I think, is my biggest when it comes to the medical field. That's my biggest concern, is just that there's adequate informed consent taking place.
Yeah, completely. It's a huge problem. That's really interesting what that doctor said, because it just goes to show like how many procedures must be illegal, really, that they're not giving the full informed consent. So
Yeah, and
yeah.
even with when we're looking at current affairs and when we're looking at the situations that are currently happening today, and we're in November 2021, and we've been dealing with this situation now for almost it'll be almost 2 years, and I think that my biggest concern is, are they actually giving people fully informed consent
Mhm.
when they go in to get these procedures done? And I think the answer is no.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's an idea that, sometimes women say, well, I gave consent, like I signed a consent form, and they think that that is informed consent. But if that consent form doesn't have all the information of all the potential side effects, then it's not.
Yeah, and plus, I worked in research for a long time. Over 16 years, I was a project coordinator. So what I did for my job was, if participants would come in for research studies, it was my responsibility to give them full informed consent. So I'm very familiar with what that is and what that entails. And it's going over the form with them, highlighting the important points and making sure that they understand what they're signing up for, and going over all of those details. And I've never had any doctor do that with me ever.
Well, it's funny because my daughter, when she was about 7, she dislocated her elbow, her arm, and she had to have surgery to put it back together. And then, like, the surgeon came to me and he had a form and he went through the risks. Like, one of the risks was that when they put it back in place, that it could break the bone. So that was one of the risks, and there were a few other things. And he did go through the form, and I've got a very clear memory of that. And I mean, it was more recently, but I don't have that clear memory of when I had my LEAP procedure. I don't remember, a form and going through the side effects or anything like that.
No, not at
Yeah.
all. And so I think, in reading your recent post, which I resonate so much with everything you've been talking about. I think one thing that you touched on was that you've kind of already been through this, and you've already learned the importance of autonomy, and taking personal responsibility for our choices, and the risks and the dangers of the medical field. We both do personally. So I think that might be one of the motivating factors, beyond why you're sharing what you share, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like, in this weird way, because when I started to heal my cervix, and I did this course called Self Cervix, which is this way that women, no matter who, like, we've all had some kind of cervical trauma, whether it's just from a pap smear, just like the fact that it's a bit invasive and it's not done with like our body might not feel in the mood for it, but the nurse does it anyway, or any like minor kind of trauma, also through sex and stuff, like if you're penetrated and your body's kind of saying no. Anyway, all these kind of traumas that we have around the cervix. So there's a course run by this woman called Olivia Bryant, and she teaches women how to heal their cervix and how to awaken to the potential for cervical orgasm. And when I started doing that course, I started to really feel my cervix. I started to feel like I was connected to it. And then I realized that everything that I do is coming from the cervix, like, because it's like the power. And I don't know, it's funny, I think of it as wanting revenge, and I don't mean that it's going to be aggressive, but it's like, no, you're not going to do this. The cervix is our power, it's our place of power, our center of consciousness, and it's like, no, this is not acceptable. And yeah, when I'm writing about what's going on now and medical freedom and all of that stuff, I have to remember my words. That it really feels like it comes from that place. So yeah.
And it's so interesting to think about, because in my own journey, I've learned that everything happens for a reason, and Perhaps this is, part of our journey is having been through these experiences. Now we can speak out and now we can share. And I think, that in itself is extremely powerful, that vulnerability and that openness and, showing up and being authentic. And it's still something that I struggle with today is, it's a little terrifying showing up and, and sharing your truth, especially after so many years of women being suppressed. And, I feel, in past lives, I've been killed for doing this kind of thing.
Mm.
So yeah, so here I am, and, and it's scary, Kate. Like every time I get on here, I'm a little nervous, but I know like my soul is telling me you need to do this. You need to bring people on. You need to have them share their experiences and their wisdom and their gifts. And it's just so important right now, more than ever, because, who knows what's going to happen in the future, what that holds. What could potentially happen to shift and shake up the human collective consciousness. And I think more is coming. And yeah, so I think we've been on this journey. There's been a purpose behind it, definitely.
Yeah, it's so great that you've come to that place, because I think that, when we have something like we've been hurt by the medical system, and then there's so much anger and regret. And I think when you come to the place where you can be like, oh, this happened for a reason, I'm at peace with it, and I can see how it's benefiting me in my life. And that's not something you want to say to someone that's just had that experience. But over time, when you see it for yourself, then yeah, it's really powerful. And yeah, it amazes me how many people have had this procedure and got injured, and now they know exactly what's going on in this situation. Like in our current times, they see right through it, and other people can't because they haven't already had the experience of not being able to trust the medical system. So yeah, we learn
Right.
from our experience.
Right. Exactly. And you've just been, oh my gosh, you've been posting like so much interesting stuff. So you guys, Kate is an author. So she's just like, she's an amazing writer. So anytime she posts something, I'm like tuned in. I'm like, okay, what does Kate have to say? um, and so you posted something a few days ago about Austria, and something about there's going to be, I hope I get away with saying this, but mandatory vaccines in 2022.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
is scary. That is really scary.
Yeah, and it's funny because I know a lot of people that have really felt a lot of fear from this news, and I don't know if it's and then someone made a comment on my post actually, and she said, the media is doing this to scare people. So and it works obviously. So yeah, on the one hand it is really scary. On the other hand, I think it's good to be mindful of the fact that they are putting it in the media to scare us, and there's big uprisings happening in Europe and in Austria apparently. And yeah, if they did bring it in, we have to see like, how they enforce it. Are there ways around it? Is it a fine, or is it, it is really horrific. Yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of had a feeling that it would come to this, and I'm not sure, but it might be a more international, worldwide phenomenon, not not just a few select countries. But we'll see what happens. And I've heard talks of also restrictions on travel, as far as if you want to travel and take a flight and get on a plane, having to have a vaccine card and things like this. So we'll see what happens. And yeah, I do absolutely agree that the media, which really, if we boil it down, it's, a handful of people who I believe control most of everything because they hoard the wealth and power. But you know, they know that fear is a tactic that works and it's highly effective in manipulating people. And I know because I've been in that place before. You know, I've been in that place previously in my life where I have been fearful, and you know that was what ultimately made me you know, make the decision to get that surgery that changed my life forever, because I was afraid. And so it was very easy for the doctor to manipulate me, and I also allowed, you know, so I'm not like, you know, totally putting the blame on her. But yeah, I know how effective that is in manipulating people. But I think that there's enough people now who are um, who are aware, or who are not going to get on board with getting these mandated injections, that they will stand up to this. At least that's my hopes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's so many people. I mean, millions in every country. It's a shame we can't all get together in the same country. We'd be like a real force to reckon with, but we are. We're just, yeah, spread out. So yeah, I mean, it can look intimidating. It can also look interesting. What I've noticed about the last few days, like a friend just messaged me and she's like, the energy is really strong. I feel like, yeah, like people are waking up. And there seems to be, on the one hand, there's this darker information of the mandatory vaccination in Austria. I think Germany might even be thinking about it now. And then there's almost like this other side, like where there's dark, there's also light. Like I just had this message from this woman, and she just had these questions, and she was really open-minded about my answers. And then I sent her all these links, and all the time I've spoken up in the year and a half, I've never had that happen. Like I've never had someone actually come to me. Well, actually I have 1 or 2 times, but it was like, usually it's more like-minded people reading the stuff, other people arguing with it. But the fact that, yeah, it gave me some hope. Like people were like, oh my God, what's going on? Like, yeah, so I feel like there's 2 sides to it.
Yeah, so you're witnessing people's consciousness starting to shift.
I don't know. I just feel like it seemed to come together. Like with this bad news, there came like suddenly people like, whoa, I'm ready to learn more about what's really going on and who's controlling the world. So yeah, it's really very intense. But yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
that means our team's getting bigger, doesn't it? So yay.
yes, yes. No. I mean, I think like part of what's happening right now is just, it's all necessary. Like it's all a necessary part of our growth and evolution. And it, you know, sometimes it does take like these things to shake people up and get them to, you know, realize like, whoa, like what is really going on? You know, because if nothing happens and, you know, you're just living your life, you know, you won't have anything that will inspire like the change or a shift, right? You'll just keep on, you know, living the life you've been living, right? Which is
Yeah.
why like sometimes I hear, you know, people, they just want to get it so they can like go back to normal, which is so funny. What?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything is, it's like humanity is coming to a head. It's like, you know, like people all around the earth have been suffering for years because of the way the system's set up. And we in the West, in our privileged lives, have had kind of a very comfortable time. We know there's injustices, but we kind of get on with our lives. Nobody does anything about it, particularly. You know, there might be charity things here and there, but it's like this is a major shift where we have reached our line in the sand. Like this is our line where we don't want to cross, and people's line is coming later. Maybe they do need to see it get worse before they wake up, if they're going to wake up at all. So yeah, it does feel like a necessary process, even though it can be really hard at times.
Yeah, because I think it's bigger than, it's not really about like a shot. It's about personal freedom and sovereignty, really, at the end of the day, about personal freedom to make choices, to do what's best for us and our bodies. You know, and I that's something I'm very passionate about, is sovereignty and freedom and personal choice.
Mm.
um Granted, there's adequate consent.
Yeah,
No?
absolutely. Like informed consent, like yeah, as we were saying earlier, maybe that was before we went live, you know, there's what you think might be consent, and then there's informed consent. And I think that, you know, there's two issues with the vaccine. Like at first it was like we knew that people weren't getting informed consent, so I felt like I wanted to share some information about it. And now it's like they're pushing it on everybody, so now it becomes personal. So
Oh yeah,
yeah.
it's being pushed big time. And I don't really watch the news anymore. I haven't watched it in many years, but the host family that I'm currently staying with, they watch it every night. And so I was like, okay, let's just see.
For research purposes.
Woo, it is, yeah, it is heavily being pushed.
Mm.
Just not even being questioned. Like, this is the thing, like, here it is, everyone's doing it. And it was just crazy. And I even heard, I don't know if you're familiar with it, there's a comedy animation show called Family Guy. And even on like one of those episodes, they tried to push it, you know, because of the Seth MacFarlane, the creator of the show, you know, that it's almost like, you know, his own personal belief, and he's trying to push that on the rest of the world. It's like, oh my goodness.
Mm.
um so yeah, you know, I respect people's choices, if whatever they, you know, want to do, whatever they feel is best for them. You know, if they want to get it, fine. If they don't, that's fine too. And I think if more people just get to that place of being able to respect other people's decisions, we'd be so much better off.
Yeah, I think it's hard for people to respect other people's decisions just because it's being pushed so much. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what people are thinking now about it all, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think it ties a lot into like the ego also. Like the egos need to be right. um you know, and that's something in my journey I've let go of. I don't need to ever be right. I don't need people to agree
Mm.
with me. I don't care, and I can agree to disagree with people. That's fine. Like I'm no longer interested in arguing or debating or any of that.
Yeah.
It's like such a waste of energy.
Yeah, that's so great because, yeah, debating is really, really draining. And I feel like usually the person you're debating with isn't that open person that wants to learn more, that's got questions. I think online it can serve a purpose sometimes if you can kind of keep your own feelings out of it, because you never know who might be reading it. And that often it's people often read more than they'll comment. So if you do have a debate with someone, I always try and think, yeah, there's someone reading this, that this information will be useful to, perhaps it will offer a different perspective. And that kind of keeps me from getting uptight about the person and trying to convince them. I'm just like, I'm just going to drop this information into this debate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it becomes a little bit more positive. And I try not to do too much of that. I really just do a little bit here and there. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see your point. I can see your point. Definitely. Definitely. Well, kudos to you, because
Yeah, no, I just had this really amazing experience once when I was on Twitter, and it was when I was talking about the LEAP procedure. And these three doctors, they were all women from Ireland, and they just started laying into me, and they started saying things to me like, who the hell do you think you are? You're just some person with an idiot, with any idiot with a smartphone can get online and say what they want, like, you know. And then they started like waving their degrees at me. They were like, I've studied for this many years and that many stuff. And I just like said my points, and like I had a few people back me up. And then I got a message from this journalist, and she wrote for this magazine in the UK. It's really well respected. It's called New Scientist, and it's like Scientific American basically,
Mhm, mhm.
but the British version. And she wrote to me and she said, I was appalled at the way those doctors spoke to you. I can't believe that they think this is okay not to know this about the cervix, that's what I was talking about, and the nerves. And then she interviewed me and she wrote a whole article about it. And that was my lesson. I was like, yeah,
Wow.
it's always worth, if you've got the energy, it's always
Wow.
worth arguing, because like that could, a journalist could be listening to what you're saying.
You've just completely changed my mind about this now. Like from us having
Yeah.
this conversation, now I'm like thinking about this more like, okay,
Yeah.
okay. She
And
makes
that works.
sense.
It works really well on Twitter, because there's a lot of professionals on Twitter. So you can just jump into those conversations. And the truth, it's like it rises to the top. It's like, you can't argue with the truth. Some
Right.
people might get uptight and try and defend their corner, and they don't want, like the doctors, they don't want to know, they don't want to believe they're harming women. So they just like want to shut people down. But other people that are, like the journalist, she's more disattached and she wants to find the truth, and she could see it. And I just thought that was so powerful. And yeah, and also that the truth, yeah, although experts and qualifications matter, they don't, if you've got the truth and you've educated yourself, then that's just as valid, no matter who you are and no matter what qualifications you've got. So yeah.
Yeah, and I'm kind of the opinion that I mean, education is wonderful, but I don't, I've interacted with a lot of medical doctors and people with their PhDs because of my line of work.
Mm.
And so I know that that doesn't necessarily mean that you're competent, or it
Right.
doesn't necessarily mean that you're good at what you do. And so for me, it's more of uh, the personal life experience that are the credentials. I mean, having credentials and having an education, that is also important, but it's not everything. Definitely not.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think retaining an open mind, and if you are one of those people that has a lot of degrees and qualifications, then also having the ability to keep your mind open and say, oh yeah, I might be wrong. There might be more to learn about this subject, like science or whatever subject is always evolving. There's always new information, and just to be open to that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's a sign of maturity, if anything, is being open-minded, and being open to, you know, this, whatever you thought that you knew, learning that that might be incorrect, and then
Mm.
saying, oh, you know what, okay, I was wrong, and now I'm going to look at this, and versus, you're always right about things. Yeah, but I mean, so like somebody, for example, who's gone through like the LEAP procedure, and who, was traumatized and has side effects and all of this, like it might be better for them to talk to someone like you versus a doctor who, might not even recognize that this happens or exists, because most of them don't.
Yeah. I mean, and our Facebook group that we've got, it's like women get more answers there than they get from the doctors. And yeah, I mean, a lot of people dismiss, they're like, oh, that's just online, it's not a professional. But sometimes there's areas of medicine that doctors they don't have the full picture, and we have from our own experience. So
Yeah, and I think it's just so beautiful how we've, people have been coming together in these Facebook groups and support groups, and because over the years I've heard a lot of people rag on, social media and this and that, and I tell them, I'm like, hey, like I personally have a lot of value in it because of things like that group, because of support groups. I'm like, I can't get that kind of support anywhere else. So, for me, it has a ton of value.
yeah. Absolutely. And yeah, it's like a double-edged sword. There's some difficult things about it. There's a lot of fake information, or misleading things, or people just saying things that aren't true. But it's a lot of truth on there. So yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I've also curated my personal feed to where it's most
Mm.
of the time very nice.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm not seeing anything on my feed that I'm just like, I did spend some time and energy making sure that that didn't happen anymore.
Oh, that's really good. That's a good idea, yeah, because otherwise Facebook takes on a life of its own, because like when people friend you and suddenly it's like, yeah, you've got all these things in it. But yeah, spending some time like choosing, like, do I actually want to look at this person's posts or not?
Yeah, and I actually like I try to vet the people that I, if people come in with a friend request, I try to vet them a little bit before I just accept. Um, so yeah, I was at one point I was messaging every single person to see if they'd reply to my message, to see if there's some sort of level of interaction there. Cause if there isn't, it's like what's the point?
Yeah.
Like I like connecting with people. I want to know like where are you from and what are you passionate about? Like what lights you up and what are you into? What like, I'm trying to see like, I'm really good at like bringing people together and connecting people.
Mm-hmm.
So if I know there's somebody over here that does this and there's someone over here that does this, I can bring those two people together. And that lights me up. I love doing that. I love when I can. And I did it recently where I brought these two women together and then they're like holding like, women's circles together now. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this.
Oh, that's great. And it's nice to hear that you're using Facebook for like real connections, because it can be a very much like quantity, like so you're following so many people, you've got so much, but yeah, like really narrowing in and focusing on the quality.
Yeah, I've gotten very much away from being focused on any type of numbers. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't really care how many subscribers I have on the channel. I mean, I think, the more subscribers that I get, the more potential outreach that we could have in these conversations, but also just trusting that like whoever needs to hear it will hear it.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the wonderful things that I've learned from these times is it's not about being huge. It's about all of us using our voices sorry, and speaking our truth, and that we need to hear everyone's voices, and sometimes I find that if you're friends with someone and they start making a channel, then maybe you're really interested because that person, or that particular topic is something you're really interested in, and just everybody like learning that our voices are important. It's more important than ever that we use our voices and have these conversations and just be part of this consciousness raising that's happening in the
Absolutely.
world.
And so I'm curious, Kate, have you always been comfortable with using your voice in this way? Or when did this start?
I think like, so I've got a 10-year-old daughter, and when she was 1, I trained as a parenting instructor. And then when I finished my training, I went and got a Facebook page, and then I started posting stuff. And at that point, I felt like really weird. Like I was like, this is so weird, like writing about my personal life on Facebook and stuff like that. But I think as I did it, I got more and more confident. And I think what helped me a lot is after I found out that my side effects from the Leigh procedure were affecting a lot of women, then I wrote a blog, because I just thought, oh my God, like I've got to write about this. If other women are being affected, then I can't stay silent, because I had been silent for like 12 years because I just thought it was me. I didn't think it was a problem. And then I did that, and I felt really scared and embarrassed because it was like about my personal life. But I put it online, and I got such lovely comments from people that that I just thought it's just a buzz, like to be really vulnerable and know that people are going to support you and cheer you on in doing that. And then it's just so beneficial to like have those social interactions, like the comments. And it's kind of like, in a way, it must be related to ego, getting all the likes and the shares and the comments. But there's another part of it, which is the connection, like the connection with like-minded people. And like now in our current times, I find like so much has been lost of our old world and our old ways of being. But what I can have that is growing bigger and stronger is the connections, like the connections that we're building with people. And yeah, like I've made so many connections, like in Italy, through my writing, and I don't know if I'd have made them if I didn't speak out. So yeah, it's part of connecting, and so rewarding, really.
Yeah, you make an excellent point, and I think that is how we find our people. So we find our soul tribe that way, is through showing up and being authentic and vulnerable and being who we actually are, right? Because I think,
Mm.
um, I've done a lot of shifting and growing over the last few years, and so um, uncovering more of who I really am, getting closer to who that is, and kind of um, letting the old stuff kind of fall away. And in doing that, uh, the people that you may have known for a longer period of time, like maybe friends or even family, you might not be on the same page with those people anymore, and that's okay, and you might grow apart, but at the same time it allows you to open up space to bring new people into your life, people who actually see you for who you are, and get you and understand you, and kind of are on the same wavelength. And it's really nice because I think at the end of the day everybody just wants to be seen and heard and loved.
Mm.
That's what we really want.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, those long-term relationships can be really rewarding. And, if it's family, they might think that you're an old version of yourself and you've moved on and evolved. But obviously, like, if that relationship is valuable to you, you keep it and you maintain it. Um, but yeah, there is a real value in also recognizing when you might be holding yourself back and not able to be your real self. And yeah, like being like, okay, I'm going to be a bit more vulnerable. I'm going to share who I really am, and then yeah, see who comes along and the new relationships that you can find when you do that.
Yes, absolutely. um and like, I've been getting this strong message, obviously that's why I started this channel, but I've been getting this really strong message that it is time for us to show up and speak our truths and share and relate. And um what would be like some advice, or what would you say to people who they have this feeling inside of them, like they want to, but they're still afraid and they're still scared?
Yeah, I find that really hard because it's so long ago that I felt like that, and I've had so much practice. And but I think that I would just, like that book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. Maybe, like, I've never actually read it. It's a really famous book. I've never actually read it, but maybe we should read it. And maybe that would be a good book to read, because I do think, like, feel the fear and do it anyway. And I think that if you feel really scared about it, then you've got something to gain. And every time when I started as a parent coach, a fellow parent coach of mine, a colleague, she'd been doing it longer than me, and she just said people love vulnerability. They love hearing about your personal life. They love to sort of hear the story of how it's been really hard for you, and you're not perfect, and you went through this struggle, and this is what you believe. And they just love that. And I think people also love truth as well, because there is, like, we are conditioned to be silent. And oh, my cat. We are conditioned to be silent and to suppress our truth. So when you speak the truth, it's like you're just breaking the door down, and you're like, no, I'm not gonna be controlled by this conditioning. So I guess my advice would be, yeah, just to try it and see how it feels, and see what you gain from it. Like, see, do you get, like, do people really resonate with it? Are they happy to hear it? You can get negative results, but sometimes they, like the story I told you about Twitter, like sometimes there's a positive side to that. So yeah, try it and see is all I can say, really. And then just grow. Like, the more you do it, the less afraid you are, because well, nothing really bad has happened. I'm just I'm just going to a really dark place where I'm thinking about the witches in the past and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
But, like, like, this is important. Like, what you feel and what you believe matters, and it's so liberating. I found that personally, I feel more and more better in my body. The more I speak my truth, the more it's like, oh, I've lifted that tension and that feeling and the fear off my body, and I feel good. So yeah. I also feel like if people are going to get angry at you, if they're going to be like, oh, you shouldn't be saying that, then we know logically that they aren't the people that we want to be friends with, because they don't support us and they're not willing to watch us grow. And so
as somebody once said, if you don't have haters, you're not doing it right. And
yeah,
that stuck with me. It's like, well, I guess I am ruffling some feathers, and I guess I am making people think about some things, and I guess I am making a little bit of an impact.
yeah,
Yeah, and that's something I've kind of been used to, like, my whole life is, I guess I agreed to come into this life to have people. Some people just don't like me for whatever reason, and sometimes they don't have a reason, which, at first I used to take that very personally, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, what is there something wrong with me? Like, I'm some sort of freak. And now I understand it a lot more, that it's not a reflection of me. It's their own personal issues. um
yeah,
but yeah, I mean, I'm used to it. It's been happening to me most of my life, so yeah, let
mm,
haters gonna hate, and that's fine.
yeah,
you know
yeah, absolutely.
you gotta kind of let it just like roll off.
Yeah, and I think it can be quite liberating to to be like, okay, it doesn't matter if people are going to make mean comments. Luckily we have this, if it's online, luckily we have this ability to control who comes into our space, and offline as well. We also have the ability to control and make choices. So I guess it comes down to consent. Like, our life is our life. We get to make choices. We get to say no. Like if someone's hating, or so we can really be who we want to be, and just if someone is not happy with that, then they don't have to be in our space. So there's really nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah, it's so liberating. Like I feel the most free that I've ever felt in my entire life. um
Yeah.
I'm like, what are they gonna do? What's gonna happen? Like, you can't, my soul is eternal, so you can't really you can't really do anything to it. It's like, and
Yeah,
you're right, like, they're not burning witches at the stake anymore, so it's like, what are you gonna do? you know I'm gonna
yeah, I feel the same actually. I feel really freed, and it's been a really, when you think about it, this is a positive thing about what's happened. Is, I mean, I certainly feel like, well, I've got nothing to lose now. Life's not going back to the old ways, and like it's this or
Yeah, and thank goodness it's not going back to that, because that was not great. you know yeah, which is what, like, it brings me back to that whole, like, people wanting it to go back to normal thing. I'm like, oh, it was so, it's just not good. Like, the way we're living is not good. It's not ho- um it's not how I believe that we should be living. And so, you know anyone, if there's people who are starving, or there's people who are homeless on the street, like, that's an indicator to me of a very unhealthy society, that we still have a lot of work to do. So, because I don't feel good in my heart that that's still happening. So, I hold a vision of a world where that doesn't exist, and every human being has their basic rights met of food and clothing and shelter. And sometimes, I'll say that to people, and they'll be like, oh, that's impossible, we can't do that. I'm like, actually, we could do it right now if we wanted to.
yeah,
And then I
yeah,
to explain how. And you can see their mind is being, like, so challenged, because they've never even, like, thought this way before. And yeah, it's a possibility. And I'm hoping it's sooner than later, when the collective decides to do this.
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just really kind of, the situation has kind of like just taken the veil of our reality, and we kind of see like those people were living in poverty, not because they had to be in poverty, but because our society has been really, really controlled by, these governments and elite powers and everything like that, that they've told us all that they couldn't help them and that there was nothing that could be done, and this is just the way society is and we can't change. And we've seen, since 2020, that change is possible. It's just that there's a lot of control. So they want to change this way and they want to do this radical thing to society, and they can do if they want. So we can also do that in the positive way if enough people want it, and if enough people see that that the kind of change is negative, so we need to shift to something else.
Yeah. And there's this like sense of like control by these people, and then I also look at it a lot of the times as, what are we agreeing to? What are we allowing? What are we unconsciously or consciously participating in that's contributing to these systems? And like for me, there was a big shift when I started to think about, okay, like where am I putting my money? Like what companies and what are their practices? Are they ethical? And all of this, and learning more about how everything is produced. And there's just like, that's one way that we can personally make a difference, is where we're putting our money and what companies we're supporting and things of that nature. And even with climate change stuff, there's a lot of different things that we can do with that, with our personal lifestyle choices. So I have a strong belief that we're going to change the world by changing ourselves, like just focusing on ourselves and loving ourselves, really, truly loving ourselves, and with the personal choices that we make. And I think that it kind of just ripples out from there.
Yeah, that's a really good point about the personal choices. And when you're talking about loving yourself, I think that, for example, if we eat meat and we eat an animal that's been kept really badly in bad conditions, then we go to the shop and we think, well, it's cheap, so I'll buy it. And you think that you're taking, but then something like that. So you're not serving yourself by, and I think that even might be the case with, like buying a book off Amazon or something like that, that you might think that you're serving yourself by getting a cheaper book, but perhaps we truly respect ourselves by making good choices and then feeling good in ourselves. And
Yes, absolutely. And I'm seeing despite all of the things in the news and all of the ways that the media or whoever is trying to manipulate people through fear, I am seeing a lot of people awakening in their consciousness. It's been happening for quite some time. There's been people who have been aware for much, much longer than I have. I'm still kind of like, I call myself a baby because I've only been like really aware, I'd say, for maybe probably the past 3 years, so I'm still kind of like an infant when it comes to this stuff. But I've, even in like the past few years of my own journey, I've seen a lot of people wake up and consciousness shifting. So, and just holding that vision of a new earth in my heart. And I have a lot of hope.
We're gonna get there.
Oh yeah, we will. It's just a matter of time and being patient. I think we all I tend to get a little bit impatient. Like, I want it to happen right now. I'm like, let's just burn it all to the ground. Let's like fire. I'm so ready. Let's just do it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, patience has always been like one of my things that I'm challenged by. So yeah, I'm just like, okay, like let's collapse it all.
Yeah, like, I'm ready. Let's do this. Let's just rip the Band-Aid off. Let's get it over with. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
It'll happen when it happens. So just gotta be patient. Just gotta be patient. Yeah. So So Kate, what I know there's some things that you wanted to share, some things you're working on or some books that you wanted to share with the viewers.
Oh yeah. Well, if anyone wants to learn more about me, then yeah, they can come and follow me on Facebook. And I've written 2 books: Tears Heal: How to Listen to Our Children, which is a parenting book about nurturing our children's emotions and helping them heal from any upsets and traumas. And then I've also written a book called Reimagining the World, which is, yeah, related to the new earth and visualizing and imagining a better world. And so it's writing exercises, 28 days of writing exercises to kind of work on that and think up what you want, let go of any fears that get in the way, and yeah, kind of let go of all the negativity that can build up from our current climate. And yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much because that's kind of like that's the work that I do with people. And
Right.
I think a lot of people don't even know what they want. That's the thing is, you
Yeah.
know, I'm very passionate about people living lives of joy and freedom and about living a life that makes them happy. And a lot of people don't even know what that is, what that looks like, what makes them happy. So I love that so much to, have these prompts to kind of get people thinking about that, because that's the first step is you have to think about that. Like, what brings me joy and how
Mm,
do I want to spend my days, because
yeah.
you get to choose.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get to choose. So that's beautiful. Well, and I'll post your links in the description of the video as far as how people can get in contact with you. And we'll post the links to your books if they want to check those out. And thank you so much for coming on with me, Kate. It's been an absolute pleasure
Yeah.
and an honor to have you here, really.
Yeah, thank you. That was a lovely conversation and really inspiring and uplifting.
All right. And hopefully, yeah, we'll keep in touch and maybe we can do this again sometime. And I hope that the
Yeah, I would
viewers,
love that.
yeah, I
Yeah.
hope that the viewers enjoyed this.
Yeah, we can just keep on speaking our truth and yeah, encouraging others to do the same. So yeah.
Yes, yay.